Oh, okay. Well, I just go back to this. My husband was born in Southern Illinois, lived there for 10 years. They moved to Florida for his mother's health, and that's where we met. And he wound up working as a pharmacist for 8 years before he went to medical school. And then he went to the University of Tennessee Medical School. While he was there, his OB resident said, we were looking for a place to go, and we didn't know where the Lord wanted us. We looked at this place and that place and the other, and none of them seemed right. And this man said, I have a classmate named Hunter Mallory that's about to work himself to death down in a little town called Center, Texas. And I wish you'd visit with him. Well, the Mallorys were from northern Mississippi. They came to a funeral. They came up to Memphis, and my husband met them, and we agreed that we would come down to Center and look it over. So we did. And now Dr. Mallory was a graduate of the University of Tennessee Medical School there in Memphis. Dr. Hooker was. And Dr. Mallory had also been a pharmacist before he went to medical school. And I'm not sure whether Dr. Ginn was or not, but they all three went to medical school there. And Dr. Ginn and Dr. Mallory, I think, had known each other. We had 2 or 3 different people come to do surgery here in Center, and when Dr. Ginn came, he stayed. The rest of them didn't. But he came and stayed, and we were glad to have him here. But these three guys, one originally from Illinois by way of Florida, and then lived in Tennessee a number of years. But these 3 guys from Tennessee that wound up from Tennessee wound up right here in Center, Texas, and they stayed. They're all 3 buried here, in fact. But they came to. They said we got to Texas as soon as we could. As soon as the Lord led us, here we came.
So my mother wants to tell you kind of what was going on in town right before the hospital opened.
Well, I will tell you one thing that I was really hoping the hospital would get completed sooner than it did. A group called G&G Construction was building a hospital building. Mr. Goodwin was the owner of the company. And they had gotten the concrete all poured and everything, and I was pregnant, so I was hoping they'd get that done in plenty of time for me to have my baby in the new hospital, whether it was the first baby born there or not. But he was flying a plane over Lake Michigan, and it went down. And they couldn't find any wreckage, they couldn't find any bodies or anything, and the insurance company wouldn't pay off. And so grass began to grow between the concrete slabs there for the hospital, and it looked like that was going to be it. And finally, the widow of the man who was building it said, we're going to finish that hospital. And she worked things out to finance it again and get the hospital built. Well, in the meantime, Nell Polly and I were hoping they'd hurry up and get that hospital built because both of us were expecting. And we kept waiting, and it just took longer and longer and longer, seemed like. We wound up, our babies were not the first ones born in Memorial Hospital. They were born in Shelby General. And the Shelby General at that time did not have the second wing on it. So it had a lot less rooms than it has today. And my labor room was a storage room. It was, somebody else was in the other labor room. And she got there before I did, and my husband said he thought I never would have that baby. Because I was all day long, and before I had only been married 17 years, so I wasn't a spring chicken anymore. But finally, it was built on March the 1st. On Wednesday, March the 1st, I had my baby, and on the 19th of March, the dedication of Memorial Hospital was made. So Carol Lee and I were there, all right, but she was in person, not in me. But we were so thrilled to have that hospital open, Dr. Hooker delivered a lot of babies in that hospital. Some of you all were delivered there. My husband delivered over 2,500 babies altogether, and that's a lot of babies for somebody that wasn't wasn't an OB/GYN man at all. But he delivered a lot of babies. Enjoyed doing that and watching them grow up, and they always were his kids. Even if you were here today, he'd still think you were his kid, not a nurse. But it was just this was an answer to prayer to have the hospital completed. But the conditions when we first came here, Dr. Hooker would go to make a house call. People would give him directions on how to get there. The roads didn't have numbers on them. The streets didn't have street signs or anything. And I can remember one after all these years where he was told, okay, you go out, I think go out toward Shelbyville and you pass a lightning struck tree and you turn right and you go down the road, and then when a big black dog comes out and barks at you, it's the next house on the left. Some of the instructions he was given just about like that. Many of them were, or a house that had burned or something. You know, things were very different then, but they were even more different before we came. When some of the things Sharon's going to tell you about, I think, were very different even back then. But people cared about each other. Doctors cared about their patients. They did what they could to take care of them. They would sit and talk to them about their problems and things. And, you know, you'd feel like you really were getting through to the doctor back then. And sometimes today, doctors are in such a hurry that you really feel like, oh, they're just trying to get me in and out of here. It's not that they're trying to do that. They would want to spend more time with you, but they simply don't have that time because they've got so many patients to see about. But in the simpler days, medicine was simpler, prescriptions were different. And Sharon, I found a tax receipt yesterday where my husband he had paid a whole $1 for federal tax money to be able to prescribe opioids. That is something, you know. You know, that was in the early 1960s, because we came to Center in 1964.
I think my DEA license is something like over $1,000.
This is for $1, and I'm going to give that one to Sharon because she's the only one in the medical profession in our family today. But medicine has changed a great deal. Most of you younger people even can think of the differences in the kind of medications that you were given when you were children and what's given today. And it takes a lot of time and study to keep up with all these things. Sometimes I think the good old days were much better. Bye.